Welcome to an hour of HealthMade Radio. HealthMade is a community for natural health seekers where we educate people about common health conditions and share extensive research on the most effective natural health treatments and promote legislation that protects our health freedoms. The core concept belief is in the innate intelligence and healing power of the body, and if properly supported spiritually, emotionally, and nutritionally, it can find its way back to health. HealthMade Radio will bring information from integrative health experts throughout the world. Check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, and I'll be your host. Today's guest is Dr. Robert Scott Bell. 6 days a week, Robert Scott Bell empowers his listeners on Robert Scott Bell Show with healing principles that can aid in physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, economic, and yes, even political healing. And we need that now more than ever. Robert hosts the fastest 2 hours of healing information on radio, dealing with everyday health issues from the perspective of alternative holistic healthcare. Robert Scott Bell tackles the tough issues and shows no fear when confronting government and corporate bullies who would stand in the way of health freedom. You'll be amazed by the amount of information about healing that is kept secret from you and what you can do to learn more about it. Robert Scott Bell is a homeopathic practitioner with a passion for health and healing, unmatched by anybody on radio. He's the co-author of Unlock the Power to Heal with Ty Bollinger. Robert has personally overcome numerous chronic diseases using natural healing principles and has dedicated his life to revealing the healing power within all of us. And as well-known, a respected member of health community, has access to fantastic guests from every specialty and practice to better equip our listeners to heal themselves from the inside out. Well, you are a powerhouse when it comes to bringing out information and knowledge that we need in order to be able to navigate what we're dealing with in today's environment. So I'm really excited to have you on the show today.
Hey, thanks, Dr. Karlfeldt. Great to connect with you here. And, it's my 23rd year broadcasting this message of health freedom, and I'm, welcoming everybody on board. And we're getting a lot more people interested in this after all these years, finally.
So you've been doing this for 23 years. I mean, what sparked the interest initially?
Well, I was chronically ill for the first 24 years of my life, and modern medicine was killing me. So it's a common story. And I prayed to God for help. And I didn't get instant healing, miraculous healing, but I met a homeopathic doctor at the age of 24 who had immigrated to the United States from Europe and studied with him for 10 years. And so I've been doing, homeopathics over 30 years. But I started a radio show in 1999 in Atlanta. And we were on once a week until 2011. And then I went 6 days a week. So I calculated the other day just because trying to figure out how many shows. It's over 4,500 shows since that time. But it's, before a lot of people were aware in the COVID last couple of years, the threats to our health freedom, it really became obvious to more people than ever before.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I still can't believe, how to prepare for the show and get ready. I mean, I know just for the little that I do, but to do it 6 days a week in 2 hours and that's you must be running on some super fuel. Keep it going.
I have a super producer called Super Don. He helps for sure. But when you have a passion for something, it's not like working. You're breathing, eating, living, sleeping it all the time. It has to come out somewhere, and this has been a way to vent for me and my personal health, much less the benefit others receive from an empowering message. So, we talk about, health issues, medical issues, of course, but fundamentally the freedom issue is something that we need to get back to. It's been abandoned through fear or fear-mongering among those who want us to be afraid of germs or afraid of one another.
And that has really been highlighted these last couple of years with everything that's been going on. The importance of us to be able to stay healthy and also not get sucked into a system that then starts to control our being in regards to our health. And so more and more people are recognizing that they can't rely on the medical community for their well-being, and they are looking towards medical sovereignty. And I know you wrote the book back in 2016, Unlock the Power to Heal. Obviously, it was way before this was going on, but even at that time, we were dealing with big pharma that was just kind of pushing drugs on us and then trying to censor our ability to educate people about healing modalities that exist that people just don't know about.
Yeah, the history of the United States is right with all kinds of natural medicine, homeopathy included, and I didn't know that growing up. I was in the Deep South for much of my young life and went to Civil War battle museums. And it wasn't until I learned of homeopathy at 24 years of age, I went back to those same battlefield museums and learned that the soldiers had homeopathic field medical kits. And I was like, how did I never hear the word homeopathy growing up? So, yeah, we have a lot of ignorance about our own history, medical or otherwise, that causes us to be somewhat victimized by the pharmaceutical establishment that says there's no cure except what we say that we have to give you. And, of course, that doesn't cure anything, but it's the only thing we're allowing you to know about. So a part of our concern or issues and my issues in my own health is not that there weren't options. It's just that they were hidden from me or purposefully suppressed from the marketplace because they would compete with those medicines that are patented and then approved by the federal, or I call it the Fear and Death Administration, but by the FDA.
Yeah, and people don't realize how these like homeopathy, it doesn't look like much. Here you have a little kind of sugar pill or a little fluid that really doesn't contain much of anything, but they don't realize how powerful that is and what change it can create within the body. And so if they had that knowledge, they wouldn't be in that state of fear, feeling that they have to rely on this medical system. I mean, so yeah, it is, that message is so important to get out.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, if you don't know of options and methods that work for you that could alleviate you of the fear, then you are subject to, a victim status, if you will. And then they say the only thing you're allowed to do is hide in your house, mask up, and then again, an experimental mRNA injection for something that is arguably not the primary cause of all of our problems, but maybe it has exacerbated or revealed deeper level chronicities that have come out because the people that were most at risk, of course, had multiple comorbidities or were very old and on many medications. But getting kids off medications before they start even is great. My kids have never had even had an antibiotic, and my son is 22, my daughter is almost 17 now. So we've been able to raise them with this knowledge better than I was raised medically.
And you see with studies, like Dr. Paul Thomas, at the conference where I met you, where you were emceeing the Truth About Cancer in Nashville, you see the studies that he's doing, and he compare the group that of children has received no vaccination versus the group that is receiving vaccination, and you see the amazing difference. I mean, it's astounding, the difference in childhood diseases and developmental issues that you see in the group that are vaccinated versus unvaccinated. So, I mean, the truth has to get out there.
Oh, yeah, it's night and day. And I've traveled around the world meeting with doctors around the planet and finding, the kids that are the healthiest kids are the least vaccinated or not vaccinated at all. And thanks to Paul Thomas and Brian Hooker and Neil Miller, and they're putting this stuff out in peer-reviewed articles, we now know definitively that the healthy kids are the ones that are not getting experimentally injected from birth on forward.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's take a quick break because I want to start to kind of initiate a discussion as to what are some of the things that you feel that people would need in order to be able to empower themselves, some basic principles, basic tools, so that they can feel safe in this kind of environment where there's so much fear that is being projected onto them. So we'll take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. Robert Scott Bell. He is the author of Unlock the Power to Heal. And also he hosts the Robert Scott Bell Show that airs 6 days a week. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. Robert Scott Bell. He is the author of Unlock the Power to Heal. And I met him he was actually emceeing the Truth About Cancer conference in Nashville. And you've emceed a lot of those in the past, correct? I mean, You seem like this was something you've done a lot.
Yes, since the first one, in fact, we've done that in addition to lecturing at the event, and it's a lot of fun winding the energies of various different healthcare providers and passionate people to, overall share a message that is one that doesn't involve frightening people, right? Really reminding them that the power to heal is theirs, and then showing them how they can tap into that power, because it's not something that what can be stolen from us. We actually give it away, or we never know we have it, so we act like we don't have it, and then as if principle begins to work. So for me, it's just fun to be able to either lecture or MC these events and see the people light up. They're already picking up on it, but now they're really strong and strengthened and empowered by all of these folks that are like yourself, that are doing such great work and bringing that message to everyone. And it's just so desperately needed.
We have, as individuals, we have such a propensity to not trust ourselves. And we always want to then give away that power, thinking that healing exists outside of us. When in reality, the human body is such an amazing, complex piece of machinery that is designed to deal with stressors, designed to deal with viruses, pathogens, chemicals, and all these different things around us. And if we just support it appropriately, it's amazing how it can keep us well if we just support it appropriately.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Look, we're dealing with a crisis of abandoning our, I say, birthright in healing, but also our responsibility to care for ourselves. And we turned it over to an elite ruling class that basically has been trained like Pavlovian dogs to write prescriptions for drugs for every symptom that ails us, and emotions too. Normal emotions in childhood, they say, now are psychiatric disorders. So it's really bizarre when you step back from it and look and say, how did we ever fall so far from the truth to allow that to be the dominant medical system or healthcare system? Because it's really disease creation and disease management. Now, there's a place for it all. In fact, the last couple of years, Dr. Karlfeldt, I've had more openness in interactions with doctors and nurses of the allopathic variety than the previous 28 years, because COVID had brought to light for many of them the limitations of their training. And so they've become much more open to having discussions with naturopaths and homeopaths and herbalists and energy type healing. And we should all work together. That's the way it should be. But it takes crises, apparently, and a lot of people dying, unfortunately, to wake folks up enough to say, you know what, we've got to do better. And there are other ways besides drugs and vaccines to get there.
Yeah, and I love that. I've seen that as well, and I agree with you. It's unfortunate that this kind of an event has to take place in order for that type of integration to be given birth to. But it is exciting where you have conversations that's been started between the allopathic and also the holistic field, so that we can then work together to achieve better health and be able to battle these type of scenarios that we've dealt with the last couple of years. So in your mind, when you have these conversations with medical doctors and they're looking for your expertise in, what should we do? What are some of the tools that you say that this is important, this is what people need to know about, and these are the tools that they need to have in their tool chest in order to be able to be, what I like to call, being medically sovereign, because we want to be politically sovereign and sovereign under God. Mm-hmm. But in order to be able to see that, we need to also have our health. And right now, we need to have that sovereignty.
Yes, the health sovereignty is critical to every other form of sovereignty, because otherwise you're dependent upon someone to care for you. And it's one thing if it's a family member that loves you and has committed their life to you, but it's another when you are a victim of a medical establishment or monopoly that will poison you and drug you until you're no longer here. So I think that one of the key things is to learn again about food, and our health depends on the quality of that food. Food used to be just food. Now we have to designate organic or chemically grown and processed, for instance, or factory farmed. And I argue very significantly now, people are coming to this awareness as well. We all also need to grow food. If everybody had a garden, we'd be in a lot better shape than the risk to supply chain disruptions that we have right now of food and all kinds of things. But in terms of acute infectious challenges, certainly homeopathy is wonderful, and I utilize homeopathic phosphorus in a general sense for fever infections without suppressing them like a drug, but healthfully. And sulfuric calcareum, which is another remedy I talk about for acute infections like staph-type pus-like infections as well, boils, etc. These are things that are known for over a couple hundred years in homeopathic medicine, but few people are aware of it. I wasn't growing up. And then, of course, the use of what we call bioactive silver hydrosol, which is a more bioactive and safer form of colloidal silver that I've been able to navigate through numerous infections in my children and never had to resort to an antibiotic. And then more recently, a leap into the copper hydrosol, because I realized with all of the overuse and reliance on zinc and vitamin C in the last 2 years, we've depleted already low copper stores in the body, and almost every manifestation or symptom of COVID can be it looks exactly identical to copper deficiency as well. So there's a lot of things we're not talking about regarding the last 2 years as well in terms of health sovereignty.
And that's the thing, is that we get going, even in the holistic field, like you're talking about zinc and vitamin C. Sometimes we get on these bandwagons and we just hit one area very hard and not recognizing that the body exists in balance. And, the balance between zinc and copper, how crucial that is. And also, and copper, the importance it is for your red blood cells, for energy, for immune system. And then also in regards to, the ascorbic acid, we're thinking, yes, it is a vitamin, but it's not a vitamin complex. It actually has that copper to its core, within the complex. So if you just use ascorbic acid, which is just kind of the outer shell, you're actually then pulling all the copper resources in order for it to be functional. And so now you have to replete that.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you know it so well, and so few people do, even in our natural product or natural healing realm. And so I'm looking at all of these deficiencies that have been even made worse with good intentions, and so we need to shore those up as well. That's kind of why Ty and I wrote the Unlock the Power to Heal book a number of years ago, because we wanted to give some basic information that was sorely lacking in one place. It's not complicated, but it's just not there. And so a simple, easy to use and practical book with also focal points on the seat of the immune system, which is gut health, and my accelerated protocol that I've helped develop with many doctors over the years with silver and aloe and recovery there for the most severe gastrointestinal challenges, much less mild malabsorption issues. So these are the things that are in that book that are very practical, pragmatic for people. And I want, everybody to be able to care the basic stuff for themselves, so that when they reach out for a doctor, it's really a very needed scenario versus when it isn't needed and it could be more harmful to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that when you recognize the power of these simple tools that are available, and I mean, I actually have your book right in front of me right now, and it's a wealth of information. What I love about it is that it's so practical, so hands-on, and by using some of these basic principles, you can navigate a lot of health issues that you would kind of run to the hospital for, run to the ER for. And I think about 90% of all the people running to the ER doesn't need to go there. I mean, it's very rare that you need to go there. So if you have these things, you would be less dependent on these institutions, and you would you'd be less dependent on antibiotics and less dependent on these pharmaceuticals. That in the long run, yes, it makes you feel safer at the moment, but in the long run, it creates harm.
Yeah, and now we're seeing it so overtly with the hospitals becoming the killing fields of the last 2 years with COVID protocols that are not designed to help or heal, but to profit the hospitals and unfortunately eradicate a lot of people from this planet. And there's been a lot of stories I've been covering on the show, I'm sure you've covered as well, where we've got to do better. And again, that's why I think many doctors and nurses are either leaving the hospital settings just because their stomach is turning over what they're witnessing, or they're just trying to find a way to make up for the things they participated in. These are real emotional and use a spiritual crises, if you will, crises that we're suffering through with allopathic medical monopolies. So yeah, going to a hospital is more dangerous than not in most extreme circumstances of acute injury.
And the sad part then is that when individuals that actually really need to go to the hospital, because of the practices that are taking place there, and also and they kind of hearing stories of friends that go in there for minor things and then just never leave. Because of that fear, now people wait longer than they should, and something that could easily then been taken care of would have gone to the hospital. They die from.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot that we can look back on. Those of us who saw this decades ago, we're not the first even, but what happens is these crises are, as much as it's just so sad to see so many. I've lost friends to these hospitals as well. It's unfortunately what it's taking for finally people within that profession to see the wrong that is being done. And so we must do better, and we're coming together to do that. Everywhere I hear people, doctors are coming together with all kinds of holistic professionals to create a new something that I don't think can be altered within those hospital settings yet. So it's a challenge, but we signed up for it. We're here for such a time as these, and I'm not giving up on it.
Exactly. Now's the time to stand up and bring out truth and then and create a change. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Robert Scott Bell. Dr. Robert Scott Bell, he is the author of Unlock the Power to Heal, and he also hosts the incredible show for 23 years, Robert Scott Bell Show, 6 days a week. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. Robert Scott Bell. He's the author of Unlock the Power to Heal, and also he does the Robert Scott Bell Show. And you can get more information at robertscottbell.com and listen to this information-packed show. I mean, the fastest 2 hours that you've ever spent. So you talked a lot about silver, and hydrosol silver, and then you talked about the gut and that you kind of warded off a lot of things with your children with it. Tell me a little bit more about that, because I know that you dedicated a good amount of portion of the book in regard to silver. So how can people use it?
Yeah, and the reason I did so, because one of the greatest fears people have is what? Infections and fevers, right? So I thought if I can counter their fear with real substantial information and practical knowledge, then that's one of the biggest reasons why people run with their kids to the ERs or the doc in the box scenarios and get on antibiotics. We've got that almost licked. Silver is a broad spectrum antimicrobial metal. And if it's released in a safe low concentration like it is in the hydrosol, you can utilize it as needed and overcome so much. It modulates immune response, but it has a direct impact to stop. If you're concerned about viruses, it can stop viral replication on contact, but bacterial or fungal overgrowth is not a problem. So utilizing that's what I use for doctors. They use Argentin 23, and for the people that go into the health food stores, they get to the Sovereign Silver. It's quite extraordinary how that can reduce the burden, if you want to call it a pathogen burden, very quickly and safely, and not disrupt the gut ecology, which is another concern that I had initially when I began exploring silver. One of the books that got me most interested in it was The Body Electric by Dr. Robert Becker, and a great scientist doctor that he was. And we saw its regenerative impact in wound care as well, which is why it's been used for so long in modern medicine, even in hospital settings for burn care. So this has been a big breakthrough, along with, I mentioned, a couple of other remedies in the book for infections that homeopathy can help with. And there are more than I could ever list in one show or even one book. But the idea is to navigate a dangerous world, because the world has always been a dangerous place. You don't get out of here alive with the physical body anyway. But provide tools that are safe, not harmful, that can be only helpful, done properly. And then if we need to get it into the gut for dysbiosis or inflammation of tissue, colitis, and things like that, then I help, work with doctors to develop that protocol for gut recovery, which I made available for free, that chapter at my website, robertscottbell.com, because it's so important. Even if people don't buy the book, I want them to have that chapter on recovering their gut. And people are struggling for years, including me. I did before I learned of this. It took me 2 years to recover my gut after 24 years of brutal gut health. And then now I can help people recover their guts in less than 2 months, even worse than my situation. So it's a great, great component for a lot of reasons. It's almost, when you see all of its properties, you think of the Windex of My Big Fat Greek Wedding, except with science, if you remember that movie.
I love it.
Yeah. Understanding the properties mean you're not just doing silly Windex sprays. You're actually using something that has substantiation and is safe to do. And so that's why it's a big part of, many of my lectures over the years. But I also recognize that before you get into trouble, we look at our health and our lifestyle and our diet and all of those things and other minerals that are deficient, including selenium, which is a big deficiency because the soils have been depleted of so many minerals. And that's the number one mineral to prevent and reverse cancer, for instance. And yet to say that in a health food store, if you have a product like selenium, they'll come and get you and shut you down. So freedom of speech is not, the attacks on it are not new just because of COVID. They've been happening for decades, long before this, but now other doctors realize just because they mention zinc or hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin that they're shut down and censored. So we've got a whole establishment working against the knowledge that you have, that I have, that we're trying to share with everybody on empowering healing options.
Yeah, it was fascinating. As the pandemic started, I did a kind of Facebook Live every day, just to empower people, and so that they knew that there were tools out there that they could reach for and not live in a state of fear. And then mentioning the different supplements that's available, vitamin D, C, zinc, and different, methylene blue, I love methylene blue, echinacea, lomatium, all these different things that are great to boost the immune system. And as an answer to that, the FTTC, were going after me, and saying I got to take all those videos down because, otherwise I'd have a $40,000 fine for every video. So we're not allowed to educate people about what's available, and that really it becomes dangerous, in their mind, because it cuts into their profit.
Yeah. And what's dangerous is the fact that we are being kept from information that could save our lives. Another part of COVID has become obvious that it's attack on the endothelial tissue within the vascular system. And so, strategically, what I lectured on at the Truth About Cancer event was, a four-pronged approach. I talked about healing at the speed of silver, copper, nitric oxide, and, what else was I talking about at that one? There's so many lectures I'm giving, and it's just hard to remember it all. But the nitric oxide thing is fascinating because it's normally produced by the endothelial cells of the vascular system when you have healthy blood flow and everything. But the spike proteins that are continually produced, I don't know how long after these mRNA jabs are pumping these things out, you become a spike protein factory. And so, we're seeing children with heart attacks. I mean, this never happened, and now they're trying to normalize it like, oh, yeah, it always happened. We just diagnose it better now. It's just absurd how they're bending over in every pretzel way they can to try and explain away the cause of the problem was the solution. Like the fear of COVID was to bring about an emergency use authorization series of shots, despite the fact that doctors even had successful treatments with ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and other things. And then the shots were designed to bring on, digital IDs and vaccine passports, right? This is a whole sequence of events that are going beyond the physiology of the body and into a permanent enslavement of humanity through our fear, again, of germs, and then ignoring, our own arrogance as men, medical man, experimenting with things that are ending up unleashing plagues that are not natural, not of God, but of man.
Yeah, and they rely upon that people are always afraid of the unknown. And when they are afraid of something that they feel they cannot control, obviously you can't be 100% certain that you're not going to be impacted by an infectious pandemic or whatever it was that was going on. So then people become paralyzed and they give their power away. And that is what they rely on. So it's so important as individuals that we take a deep breath, and we recognize we do have a God-given power. Obviously, we don't have control over life or death, only God does. But at the end of the day, the more power we give away, the less in control we are, and the more sick we're going to become, and the closer to death we're going to be.
Yeah, that's so right, and that's why we, again, this is why we do what we do. Why we must speak out. Everybody must share the information as they learn it. By the way, the other factor was the first element on the periodic table of elements. How could I forget hydrogen? Having molecular hydrogen dissolved into water is also facilitating powerful antioxidant reactions and cell signaling modulation events that can also reverse some of this damage. So, it's not that I have a monopoly, nor do I want one on COVID recovery or treatment, but recognizing the things that we have and working together with many people around the country and around the world now, we're getting better at the response and prevention, and hopefully we won't fall prey to fear, porn, if you call it that, or the ignorance of our own bodies and immune system and how they actually work.
So let's take a quick break, but then I want to kind of highlight again. You spoke of a number of things that could be really beneficial for the post-COVID syndrome or post-jab syndrome. We'll take a quick break. Listening to Health Made Radio, Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. Robert Scott Bell. He is the author of Unlock the Power to Heal, and also the host of the Robert Scott Bell Show that airs 6 days a week, 2 hours of packed information. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Health Made Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Dr. Robert Scott Bell. He is the author of Unlock the Power to Heal and also the host of the Robert Scott Bell Show. So, obviously you've seen it. I see it in my practice. You have people coming in. They've gotten COVID or they've gotten the jab, and now they're dealing with the after effect. Whether it's neurological, they're exhausted, they're in pain, they're losing hair. They can't taste or smell anything, so they're dealing with heart issues. They're dealing with respiratory issues. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I have friends that work at the hospitals here that at the ERs, and it's just insane what they're having to deal with. And a lot of them are just people have been jabbed, and it's kind of the weirdest type of symptoms that they haven't seen, really, and the doctors really don't know how to deal with it. So what are some of the things you mentioned? Some supplements, that talk about hydrogen. So how do people get that? I mean, where do they find hydrogen? I mean, it's in air, but where do we get it?
Well, the technology, I think initially, at least it exploded out of Asia. No pun intended when we talk about hydrogen explosions. But in terms of water, you have 2 hydrogen and oxygen. So through an electrolytic process, a reduction process, you can actually dissolve that H2 into the water and make it bioavailable for you by just drinking it. And that obviously can get a systemic benefit because, there's no obstacle to hydrogen, the smallest element on the periodic table of elements. And it can even bind with the hydroxyl radicals, some of the most dangerous free radicals in the body, and neutralize them immediately into water for safe elimination. So it has a lot of direct and indirect benefits. There's a lot of cell signaling modulation that occurs. So I think drinking it is the most efficient way to get it in. And, I work with my buddy Paul Bertero from Synergy Science. He's got these water technology machines. A lot of them have been sold over the years, not from him, but from others that they talk about alkaline water. But unless the water is buffered, it's not really the benefit. The benefit is really the hydrogen that's released. And there's over, I think, 700 or more studies now in climbing about hydrogen's benefits in the body for a number of different things. The other thing I talked about was the nitric oxide production, because the endothelial lining of the in this case, the vascular system produces this. But normally when people will stimulate it, like with beets or citrulline or L-arginine, they don't realize they're only getting a short burst of nitric oxide, but it also is a short burst production of peroxynitrite, which is one of the most dangerous and harmful free radicals in the body. And they don't know how to counter it. They can end up having as many problems as they have benefits. So the Cardio Miracle formulation that John Hewlett put out many years ago, it took me a while to research this before I was comfortable taking it. And ever since I've been on it, and talk about oxygen perfusion within the blood and also to the cells. It's been extraordinary. I'm 56 now. I go work out at a 9-round gym, and Last week, I won the challenge of the week for the whole gym. I'm talking beating the 20-somethings, 30-somethings, 40-somethings at it because, part of the problem with not being fit is not being able to deliver oxygen to the cells at the end of the capillary bed, where a lot of the damage is occurring in COVID or post-COVID jab. And then the other thing is the copper. Copper works with selenium at the microcapillary bed to protect the integrity of the vascular system, the tissue, as well as the cardiac proteins at the heart level. Selenium and copper, and we've depleted copper so much in the soils alone, they're down almost 80% from many decades ago when it was measured. And very few people are eating like their ancestors. Who eats grass-fed beef liver anymore? And so copper is way down because we've also, you mentioned it too, taking so much zinc and vitamin C, and you deplete further what was almost not there. So by bringing the copper back in, also copper will work with long COVID because copper and magnesium work at the mitochondrial level to produce adenosine triphosphate, ATP. So no copper, no energy. So there's so many things about this that are, if we pull back from the fear of COVID, we can say, all right, what are the pathways that are manifesting disease or inflammation, et cetera? What would be the reason besides COVID that could happen? And we look at the minerals that we're deficient in, we replenish them, and we can recover these people very rapidly.
Yeah, because some of the the main thing you're talking about, the inflammation of the endothelial lining of the blood vessels, and obviously blood vessels, that's where all transport of nutrients take place, and that's where the oxygen is transported to tissue. And so if that is inflamed, that will then reduce nutrients to be able to, first, circulate at sufficient speed from one location to another. And secondly, to be able to then move from the circulation, from the blood vessel, and move through the membrane into where the cells are. So an inflamed tissue is not going to be able to allow that transport to take place. So it becomes so crucial to be able to calm down that inflammation. And that's what we've seen with these spike proteins. And obviously COVID in itself has spike protein, but when you do the jab, now you're getting at 200 times you would if you get the infection. So now you're going to be dealing with even more infection. So that's why it becomes so important. And then you have the issue with the mitochondria, the downregulation of the mitochondria because of the jab and COVID, and also the downregulation of the immune system. So all these factors you got to take into account.
And then oxygenation of the blood. How everybody now knows about blood oxygen saturation. Nobody knew about it. Suddenly everybody knows about it. Why? Well, a big part is the damage to the red blood cell. But again, in the absence of copper, iron cannot be utilized appropriately for oxygen transport. It becomes an inflammatory component. So again, bringing the copper back in is so critical and so overlooked now. I can't emphasize it enough. So these are the things I get to lecture on and cover in my show, in addition to all the other stories that we cover. And I just invite people on over to robertscottbell.com. There's a live chat room when we're on the air. It's just fun. We have a great community of people that are helping one another all around the world, really, at this point. I'm just so grateful to connect with you and your wife and all the great people that are doing such important work now to help those that are finally waking up to the realities that, they're not necessarily victims of all of this information. It's just they didn't know it, and they can be absolutely victors in the situation where we're all challenged to do better.
And you're going to be speaking at a symposium not too far away from here later on this month, right?
Yeah, April 22nd and 23rd. It's a Friday, Saturday this month. Is Be Healthy Utah, their event. It's been postponed 3 years because of the COVID thing, so it's finally back on. And BeHealthyUtah.com. You can come to the upcoming events page at robertscottbell.com, and there's a code to get in for $17 off your ticket for the weekend. So it's a great deal. Bell 30. My last name Bell 30 gets you 30% off. But I'd love to see folks. It's not far down I-15 from where you guys are. Salt Lake City area, BeHealthyUtah.com. Check it out, and I hope to see a lot of you come on down and really, we need to get together. We need to see each other in person and even give hugs. My gosh, we were so hug deficient in the last 2 years.
Yeah, see that exactly. We need that physical contact and the boost of immune system activity and mitochondrial activity just from a regular hug or get to see a person smile. Not this kind of face covered up with a mask. And it was interesting. My wife, she was at a grocery store And now when people are not required to wear masks anymore, the gal that was checking her out, she said, I've actually am having to start to learn how to smile again because I didn't smile, for those couple of years. So it's right. All these kind of retraining, that's taking place. So yeah, it's sad. It's really sad what's happened.
Yeah, it is. We've got to come back to, the fact that we are not vectors of disease, especially teaching the children that their breath will kill grandma. Beyond not brushing their teeth, that's another story. But, it's like we got to overcome a lot. There's a lot of psychological and spiritual damage that's been done to these younger kids to come through this. So it's not just a physical thing we got to do. We got to meet their spiritual needs and recognize or help them acknowledge their divinity as opposed to their evilness simply for breathing without a mask.
Yeah, exactly. And recognize that our bodies it's a learning system, and it needs to be exposed to information, needs to be exposed to different pathogens and how pathogens are evolving in the community. And by being exposed to that, we upgrade our immune system. So it's like a software upgrade that we get every time we're exposed to this. But if we isolate ourselves, we never get our upgrade, and then our system are more easily crashed.
Yeah, exactly. Look, this is so rooted in common sense. It should resonate when people feel it, even if they don't understand some of the language, if we use technical language or whatever. But the idea is to sense it. And people are desiring, I think, authenticity as well. And that's why I'm sure that folks are tuning into your show because you mean it. What you're doing is really living what you believe. And that's just something we don't see in mainstream media and a lot in the hospital setting. I mean, these people are miserable because all they're doing is harming people, whether they're consciously aware of it or not. There's a schism in their psyche. That's why there's a high suicide rate in the allopathic medical profession, more so than most professions. I think that's a fundamental flaw. And you take a Hippocratic oath to do no harm, and the very first thing you do is write a prescription for a toxic poison. It just doesn't fly at the soul level in the way that people can convince themselves they can get away with it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Dr. Robert, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm so grateful for all the information that you bring out to the masses and for the force that you are in this field. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your energy, your passion. I really appreciate it.
Dr. Karlfeldt, I appreciate so much what you're doing and helping me bring the power to heal back where it belongs with each and every one of y'all out there. So thank you.
My pleasure. Well, that is it for today. You're listening to Health Made Radio. Remember, check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. 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 Is what you make it.